My friends, it's been said that the world you grew up in no longer exists. For myself and many of my viewers, that world was the 1990s. Through the clarity and advantage of hindsight, many make the point that the 90s were perhaps the pinnacle of human existence, as good as things have ever gotten when considering factors such as the freedom to grow as a person without technology watching and recording you every moment, a good balance between the physical world and newly formed digital realms, and a peaceful bliss emanating through the airs of the world, at least from what I recall, admittedly perhaps with some rose-colored nostalgia glasses. Memory, and particularly nostalgia, are powerful things, hearkening to a time we remember fondly, whether we remember the whole of it or only the parts we want to remember. And so, if we follow this hypothesis that the 90s were the best time to ever grow up, where did it all change? When did it all come crashing down? Perhaps an even more poignant quote about all this is that the last day of the 90s was not actually December 31st, 1999, but September 10th, 2001. I'll give you a second to think about what happened the next day. Nostalgia is, and has always been, the real driving force behind this channel here, and arguably behind speedrunning as a whole. Speedrunning was simply a really good way to appreciate a childhood favorite video game, giving it some meaningful replay value. Another thing that offers me immense nostalgia, as a guy in my mid-30s, are photographs of the Twin Towers, reminding me of this rose-colored ideal world, before a massive loss of innocence, the most significant flashbulb memory of our generation. Today I wanted to combine these two aspects by exploring all the depictions of the Twin Towers on the Nintendo 64 that I could find. So come with me, and let's use these games as a portal to the past, to explore the world that once was. The game BattleTanx was released for the Nintendo 64 in December 1998, and features gameplay where you drive around as a tank in a post-apocalyptic United States of America, completing objectives, destroying enemies, and that sort of typical business. But what apocalypse befell America in this fictional BattleTanx universe, you might ask? Well, in the game's intro cutscene, it tells us that there was some kind of malady which affected only women with a 99% mortality rate. This caused society to collapse and turned America into a sort of warlording state of men fighting over the remaining 1% of women, along with other socio-political implications. In the same opening cutscene, we can see Lower Manhattan set in the background of where the protagonists are standing, perhaps in Queens, and while the protagonist characters are blocking the majority of the view of the towers, it is heavily implied that most of New York City, including the towers, were destroyed, as a large explosive detonates right in the center of Manhattan. An opening text just before you gain control of a tank for the first time reads that the once great city known as New York is now a nightmare of scorched concrete canyons ruled by a mutant gang known as the Urban Decay. It then eerily pumps you up by showing the title of the first level, Ground Zero, a term which, yes, can refer to the epicenter of any disaster, but was used to great extent to refer to the location where the towers once stood in the aftermath of their destruction. The gameplay is pretty low resolution with quite short draw distance, so even on the New York themed levels, there are really no skyscrapers or towers to be seen, let alone trying to figure out which of these buildings may have represented any specific building in particular. So all we're left to ponder is the opening cutscene and the endless destruction the game bears out. Oh yeah, the game, again, is released in 1998, and it asserts that the apocalypse upon which it is set is taking place in a near-future version of the United States. The year it purports to take place, 2001. So that's pretty eerie, and somewhat reminiscent of Deus Ex's version of New York, in which the towers were emitted from the get-go due to memory limitations in the game at the time, though in that case the in-game lore purports that the towers were destroyed off-camera at some point previous to the point when the game takes place, the year 2052. Deus Ex was released in 2000. The predictions and prescience are just too much sometimes. Let's switch to a lighter note for a bit. Other Nintendo 64 games with representations of the towers are often games that feature American-themed levels and settings. For example, Mickey's Speedway USA, a racing kart game developed by Rare under license from Disney. There are numerous stages from just about any major city or location one can imagine in America, and so of course there is a New York City level. The thumbnail on the level select screen does appear to show two towers in the distance. However, driving around the stage, I couldn't find them anywhere. There is certainly this very distinct depiction of Mickey as the Statue of Liberty, which is cute and fits the theme of the game, but no equivalent depiction of the towers, despite them being shown on the level select thumbnail. Perhaps the memory needed to render the towers, even in a distant background or skybox, was simply too much for the game to handle. And perhaps this is a theme when it comes to the depiction of these man-made monoliths on this video game console. On a similar note, Cruisin World has a New York City level. Strangely, Cruisin USA does not, and this is particularly strange because Cruisin USA came out first 2 years earlier, and so one would think that New York would have made it into that game, but it just didn't. Anyways, in the thumbnail for the New York stage on Cruisin World, we can indeed see the Statue of Liberty and a pair of beautiful towers standing proudly in the background. While driving, the towers are spottable, though they only appear for a brief flash. Did you see them there? Only around one turn per lap are they visible, and only for a brief moment. It was actually pretty tough to slow down and stop in order to get them in frame, but there they are. Again, despite them being an iconic landmark of the city at the time, I suppose memory limitations of the game and console prevented them from being displayed more prominently. Hybrid Heaven is another cooker. Right there in the opening cutscene for the game, we see the towers. They set the tone for the game, which takes place underneath New York City in a sort of futuristic world where humans have become hybrids with alien life. And we see the intro cutscene continue to descend underground into a complex base, really showing us that it takes place well underneath New York. We spend the game fighting through these levels of the underground installation, so we never see the towers through our play. Perhaps, once again, they just took up way too much memory to render on the Nintendo 64. At the very end of the game, we see some images of a city skyline. Though it's less distinctively New York City, it does still appear as though the towers are present. Now, I've never played this game. I remember accidentally getting it once from Blockbuster when I tried to rent Diddy Kong Racing. They put the wrong cartridge in the case, and I noticed and was able to swap it out before leaving the vicinity. But sometimes I wonder how my life might have been different had I returned home as a young lad and played through Hybrid Heaven instead. Rush 2 Extreme Racing USA features the towers prominently on its New York stage. Not only are they unmistakable in the level select screen for the stage, but unlike the other racing games that feature them, we can actually interact with them on the course, driving between them, even exploring the famous plaza of the World Trade Center, the Austin J. Tobin Plaza. A shortcut and secret on the level involves a pretty radical jump between the towers, grabbing this key on top of the fountain, which is a very cool 90s thing to do. We can't get a great look at the towers, since it's a racing game after all, and not an exploration game where we can, up-see and look around. But we can drive around the plaza, seeing this detail of the fountain. The real world plaza had this bronze sculpture called the Sphere, which actually survived the events of that fateful day, and is now on display in Liberty Park, New York City. So, lo and behold, Rush 2 Extreme Racing USA gives us perhaps the best and most detailed depiction of the legendary Austin J. Tobin Plaza, a place millions passed through over the years when it stood proudly at the foot of these towers. Another interesting depiction comes from this clip, a promotional video, Nintendo Holiday Demonstration, which features a teaser for the upcoming Ultra 64, the codename for what would later become the Nintendo 64 and its Silicon graphics hardware. Now, many of the scenes shown are pre-renderings, and we know the Nintendo 64 didn't quite look this good, but indeed, among the many scenes shown in this teaser, we see this. A fly-in shot of New York City passing by the Statue of Liberty towards the towers. Before we get to the last entry, let me know if you know of any other depictions of these towers on the N64 or any other video game at that. PlayStation, PlayStation 2, I'm sure they have some. So then there's Pilotwings 64 with its Little States stage, featuring remarkable renditions of numerous American cities and locations, including of course this render of New York City. It's here where we find the most interactivity with the towers and the surrounding area. The plaza is less detailed than Rush 2, but we can still travel around the towers and even fly up on top of them, offering us the kind of view that countless tourists may have seen over the decades these towers stood tall. There's something just so surreal about this all. I didn't play Pilotwings as a kid back in the 90s, I only first played it a few years ago, and the moment I saw this depiction of the towers in-game, I was inspired to make this video. As much as seeing images of the towers gives me that nostalgic feeling, yearning for a better world, whether it truly existed or not, being able to stand on top of the towers only takes that feeling further. The rocket belt vehicle, a type of jetpack, gives us the most maneuverability to check out the towers and surrounding area, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the gyrocopter vehicle, well, comes with these rockets. Part of many missions in the game where we must destroy some target or hit some target. So yes, for the morbidly curious, we can indeed shoot the rocket at, well, anywhere or thing or building we want. Now, of course, it's a video game from 1996. There's no mechanic for any of these structures to fall down, but I'm sure some young kids spent countless hours exploring the worlds of the game, and at least some probably fired a missile or two towards these iconic structures. If they only could have known or predicted what would befall this place only a few years later. There's even this unbelievable screen cap from the EGM 1998 year-end buyer's guide, which discusses their top 10 favorite N64 games. The little section about Pilotwings 64 reads, "Even though we long ago beat every one of this game's many challenges, we still like to fire it up and buzz the World Trade Center in the gyrocopter." How could they or anyone else have known? A truly eerie, ephemeral remnant among the countless gaming magazine's entries of this time. Alas, my friends, there's an homage to the depictions of the Twin Towers on the Nintendo 64. I hope you enjoyed this look back and it evoked that nostalgic feeling for you as it did for me. I always love to hear stories about that day, your memories, and maybe your experiences with seeing these towers in-game, so be sure to share them in the comments. Thanks to the Patreons and channel members for all your support. Stay true, my friends, and I'll see you in the next stream or video.